Thanks for joining us on the program today. I'm Amarachi Ubani. Here's what's coming up within the half hour. Family of knife victim in Belfast warns unrest is not welcome as authorities deploy extra police to the streets. U.S.-Iran trade new threats after the two sides exchange strikes. Plus, tensions reignited as Pakistan launches deadly airstrikes in Afghanistan. Let's begin the world today. We begin with a warning from the family of the victim of the Belfast knife attack, Stephen Ogilvie, saying the unrest is not welcome, emphasizing that peaceful protest is the only way forward. Well, that statement follows an overnight unrest in Belfast after the incident on Monday in which Stephen was stabbed several times by an attacker identified as a 20-year-old Sudanese. The family stated that they're aware of the tensions and talk of protests following the tragedy. They stressed that they do not want the incident to be used to divide people or fuel hostility, noting that many migrants make a deeply valuable contribution to the country. Police say there will be more officers deployed across the city today following last night's violence, while public transport systems have been closed early. Here's more on the riots that happened Tuesday night.
It was a night they had not seen in a long while. The images of burning cars and fires littered the streets Tuesday night as riots broke out over what people have come to believe was an attempted beheading of a 40-year-old man by a Sudanese migrant. The Northern Ireland and Union flags were prominently displayed as dusk approached, while firefighters and riot police deployed to stop the violence. Footage posted on social media showed a knife-wielding attacker slashing at the head and neck of his victim, a scene the UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer has described as sickening. The demonstrators and riots were against unchecked migration spread around the city, resulting in vandalism, with barricades set alight by masked protesters and reported attacks on property and businesses owned by minority ethnic groups. Buses and other vehicles were seen torched in the city before riot police moved in to disperse the demonstrators. Properties like a Middle Eastern supermarket in the city was torched. Crowds gathered around multiple properties in the city, watching as they were blazed. After announcing that the attacker, a 30-year-old Sudanese national, had been arrested and charged with attempted murder, the police noted that there is currently no evidence that Monday's attack was terrorism-related. The attacker has been identified as Hadi Aludid, with an address in Concurrent Avenue in North Belfast. He appeared in court in Belfast via video link from Musgrave's Serious Crime Suite, charged with attempted murder. He has also been charged with possession of a knife in a public place and threats to kill an NHS worker. The victim remains in hospital with serious injuries to his eyes, neck and back. The court heard he lost his left eye in the incident. Aludid has been remanded into custody. This incident comes amid heightened tensions over asylum and migration in the UK, following a string of attacks and unrest outside so-called migrant hotels.
The UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer is under fire again in the House of Commons over the attempted beheading on the streets of Belfast and how the suspects, an asylum seeker, had managed to enter the UK claiming refugee status in record time. Leader of the opposition, Kemi Badenoch, an MP for Belfast East, and the leader of the Democratic Unionist Party, Gavin Robinson, questioned how Mr. Starmer's government plans to ensure values are enforced, that the rule of law in this country sustains alongside border control management. Let's take a listen to the proceedings.
The scenes in Belfast are deeply disturbing. A man is in hospital after a brutal attack, and now families are frightened after a night of violence. There is a live criminal case, so we must be careful about what we say. But we can be clear about this. People have a right to be angry. I am angry. and people have the right to expect their politicians to secure our borders. But no one has a right to burn families out of their homes or to burn public property and attack the police. We all have a duty to stand up for public safety in every way.
Mr. Speaker, we will crack down on anyone who's fueling this division. But it is really important, and I agree with him, we're heading into a very difficult situation in Northern Ireland. As I say, I've spoken to the Chief Constable, the First Minister and Deputy First Minister this morning. They are united in saying we should all be calling for calm. The police are on the front line, and it's our duty as politicians to call for that calm, and nobody who's a politician should be whipping up division and hatred.
The government's job, our collective job, is to act, to protect our country and to defend our borders. The Prime Minister knows that the man charged entered our country illegally. He passed through 2 safe countries and attained asylum in record time. Will he meet with me urgently to discuss the steps he and his government will take to ensure our values are enforced, that the rule of law in this country sustains, and that he protects and closes the open, porous border between our country and the Irish Republic?
We are all sickened by this attack, but the scenes of violence and disorder have no justification, and we need to be really clear about that. Of course there are questions that need to be answered, but destroying communities, destroying homes and driving people out of their homes is not and will never be the right way to respond to an attack like this. And I look forward to working with him and others to ensure that we get the calm response and give the police the space that they need to deliver justice.
Let's bring in Channels Television's correspondent in London, Teniola Oyetayo. Teniola, these riots are nothing like what we've seen in a long while. The police, have they made any arrests of the mobs that carried out the torching of homes and properties?
Hello, Marichi. Yes, arrests have started as of early this morning. Police say they have arrested 3 people so far in Belfast, and a 42-year-old man has already been charged. But police are making it clear that this is only the beginning. A public order inquiry team has now been set up, and officers say they're reviewing video footage, online material and witness accounts, with more arrests and prosecutions expected over the next few days. We've also, I think it's worth mentioning as well, that we've also had 3 arrests made in Scotland after hundreds of people marched through Glasgow in mass yesterday evening, reportedly attacking people for the colour of their skin. I believe 5 people have been injured and 2 police officers were also injured. This is something that we've unfortunately been seeing frequently now over the past, I would say, 3 years. Last year, there was an anti-immigration rioting in Northern Ireland over an alleged sexual assault involving 2 teenagers by someone described of being of foreign origin. And then, of course, and I'm sure you remember this one because it was quite big, July 2024, where parts of the UK and Northern Ireland saw mass riots following the killing of 3 little girls who were stabbed near Liverpool by a British son of Rwandan refugees. Most of those that were arrested have been jailed, with a number of them still fighting in court. So authorities are saying that these rioters will face the law, especially with the damage that we saw last night.
Yeah, and there does seem to be a sense, an air of uncertainty over Belfast following the violence. People are afraid to get to work, reading some of the comments this morning. Are things really calm over the city? Is there law enforcement on the roads? Even the police said they're deploying more police to ensure that, you know, there's law and order. Do they really have things under control?
Of course, as expected, there is heavy police presence, but I would not say the atmosphere is completely calm. It might be calmer now in daylight, but there's still a lot of fear, especially in areas that we saw homes, cars and businesses attacked overnight. I'm sure you've seen the images. People have described it as looking like a war zone. The police service of Northern Ireland says a larger policing presence will be on the streets tonight, preparing for the possibility of further unrest. I believe an additional 200 police officers will be deployed tonight. But on the ground, as expected, just reading what people are sharing online, many people are worried and on edge, rightly so. Some families had to leave their homes due to the disturbances, including a parent, which was quite serious, I thought. There was a report of a parent carrying a 2-month-old baby, imagine in the middle of the night, fleeing their home when they should be sleeping. Police officers were also attacked, 2 officers were injured. We know today some businesses are shutting early. There's some disruption with transport. Some schools are also decided to close early. Some people, in fact, I was reading on Twitter, someone said they decided not to send their kids to school today. That's just to show you how worried people are. So yes, there is law enforcement on the street, and police are trying to show that they have the situation under control. But the fear has not disappeared, especially among communities who feel they were targeted. And also looking back at what we've seen over the past 3 years, there are fears that this can escalate even further.
Yes, and we have seen, some of those communities are the African communities in Belfast. As you rightly pointed out, a number of their homes were torched right in the middle of the night. Knowing that the attacker was a Sudanese man, has there been specific targets on African communities, and how is the government handling that?
Right. The African community, and especially the Black migrant communities, are understandably very worried. Some of the homes and vehicles attacked were linked to ethnic minority families. There was one family I heard. I'm not sure it's a Nigerian family, but I know it's an African family, a Black family. They had lived in the area for 20 years. They were being attacked. And, these are people you expect to be your neighbors. Imagine having to go back home. The trust has been ruined, basically. And there's a real fear that people are being blamed for something they had absolutely nothing to do with. And I think that's the main worry, that these attacks are targeting basically just anyone. These people are just taking out their anger on basically anyone. The assurance from the police, the UK government, and political leaders in Northern Ireland is that people must not be targeted because of their race, nationality, or background. The Prime Minister, as we heard there, and other politicians have condemned the disorder as totally unjustified. And Northern Ireland's political leaders have also appealed for calm. The victim's family has also spoken out. They said this tragedy should not be used to divide people. And I think that's a really important message at this moment. But I have to say, we'll have to see tonight whether people are listening, whether this has any effect. Especially with the dialogue, the kind of dialogue that we're seeing online. It's really scary, and the sort of things we're seeing being spread online, it's definitely stoking fear and hate among people.
Yes, and then it also brings up the issue of migration. We had the MP from Northern Ireland speaking in Parliament earlier, just a track before we came to the discussion. He was talking about how the Prime Minister had allowed a Sudanese man, granted him asylum quicker than it regularly would have. Is this really a migration issue? And I understand the Prime Minister having to play this fine dance between trying to compensate those in Parliament and then also trying to calm everything down. He has a tough job to do that. But is this really a migration issue? I know that every time there is a crime, it all boils down to who it was, where they're from, where they're originally from, and what the government did, what role the government had, in regularizing their stay in the UK.
Actually, I think this is the difficult point for the government. They're trying to hold 2 points at the same time. First, the knife attack is being treated as a serious criminal matter. The suspect, a 30-year-old Sudanese man, has been charged this morning, and he was remanded into custody and will appear in court again on the 8th of July. Police have also said the attack is not being treated as terrorism related at this stage. But then the suspect's immigration status has brought the issue of migration into the political debate, especially because of questions about how he entered Northern Ireland and the wider common travel area between the UK and the Republic of Ireland. And of course, what the sort of sentiments that we're seeing online. It's a really difficult political environment when it comes to talking about migration. At Prime Minister's questions, the Prime Minister's message was that violence is totally unjustified. He said many people have questions, but driving families from their homes and attacking communities is not a legitimate response. So he's stuck between the line of trying to appeal to people who are rightly mortified and upset about what was seen on Monday. But then there's also making a clear statement that people can't be attacked. This can't be used as a means to attack innocent people. It's a tense political environment at the moment as well. And just to mention, last week we did see some violent episodes breaking out in southern England over the police handling of a murder of a young white student stabbed to death by a British Sikh man. So the cause of calm will continue, but there are some parties using this as an opportunity to make a point about their anti-immigration policies, which is unfortunate. But there are also things that are emerging that are going to fuel these kind of unrest, unfortunately. But all eyes are on tonight, seeing how things develop, and hopefully things will become overnight. So we'll definitely be keeping an eye on that.
Thank you, Taniela. Thank you again for your reporting and for keeping eyes on the issue. Thanks again. We're off on a short break now on The World Today. Still ahead. How do you treat asthma? Well, try swallowing a fish if you live in Hyderabad in India. They say that works. Stay with us. Welcome back to The World Today. Pakistan today launched deadly airstrikes along its border with Afghanistan, breaking months of relative calm and reigniting tensions in the region. Pakistan's Information Minister Atalua Tara said the calibrated strikes destroyed 4 targets and killed 26 militants. He states that the operation was in response to recent terrorist attacks inside Pakistan, specifically targeting border hideouts, an ammunition cache and a training center. However, Afghanistan's Taliban government is claiming a vastly different civilian toll. Officials in Kabul say Pakistani strikes hit 3 provinces, killing 13 people, including 11 children. This latest escalation is the first major flare-up since February, when border fighting left hundreds of people dead, while both nations agreed to a ceasefire last October. Following weeks of deadly clashes, deep distrust remains. Pakistan has long accused Afghanistan of harboring terrorists and launched cross-border attacks, a claim the Taliban government continues to deny. Nigerians in South Africa preparing to be evacuated from the country back home. A statement from the Minister of Foreign Affairs says the Minister of State for Foreign Affairs, Ambassador Shola Enikolai, will be on the ground at the Murtala Mohammed International Airport to receive them on behalf of the federal government. The 268 evacuees will be accompanied by the Acting High Commissioner to South Africa, Ambassador Temitope Ajayi, who will then hand them over to the minister upon their arrival in Lagos. They will be transported by Air Peace Airlines and are expected to arrive by 5 in the morning of Tuesday. According to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, a screening exercise by the Nigerian High Commission in Pretoria for Nigerian nationals willing to voluntarily return to the country due to the ongoing xenophobic attacks has been extended to Sunday, June 14, 2026 to accommodate more persons. Now, those anti-immigrant protests are causing great concern for many Africans living in South Africa, even for Nigerians preparing to return back home, though the South African government says it is not a characteristic for the citizens to engage in violent attacks. They want stronger responses on the issue.
Migration is the way of the world, and we must be prepared to embrace it. South Africa is a better country for migration, and we can become better still.
The words of South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa as he appeals to citizens to live together with migrants in the country. Immigration has always been a thorny issue in South Africa, a country rich in natural resources and several distinct ecosystems. Its stable economy and conducive terrain has attracted people from across Africa, making it a melting pot of different tribes and tongues.
South Africa is an investment-friendly country. And, you know, investors, they look at the optics, they see what is there, and that attracts them to their economy. In terms of Nigerian business cooperation, the business community in Nigeria are watching with keen interest what is going on.
But the attraction has become a bane for the South African people, whose immigration systems struggle to control the influx. Frustrated by the impacts on social welfare and well-being, they've turned on their African brothers, and Nigeria, once again, has resorted to evacuations. More than 1,000 Nigerians are being screened by the High Commission in Pretoria and the consulate in Johannesburg for the start of evacuations on Wednesday night.
The repatriation is on course. Mr. President himself has reiterated the fact that this aircraft must come to South Africa, and our citizens who are imperiled will have the chance of getting on this aircraft to be brought back to their country.
In light of the surge in rallies and protests against foreign nationals in recent months, and coupled with high unemployment, President Ramaphosa has confirmed a host of new measures to tackle irregular migration, but he's also warned South Africans not to turn on each other. The measures he's proposed include jail time for those hiring undocumented workers, special courts to speed up deportations, and the use of biometric data to combat identity theft.
I'm a bit worried by the way at which the government is handling the situation, because I believe any serious government that is serious about clamping down, on these vigilante groups, more needs to be done. But unfortunately, that is not what we are seeing.
Previous outbreaks of violence, including deadly riots in 2008 and renewed attacks in 2015 and 2019, have strained relations between Africa's two largest economies. While South African authorities condemn xenophobia and promise to protect all residents, the latest tensions between the two highlight persistent tensions and vulnerability of migrant communities in the country. Amarachi Ubani, Channels Television News. European leaders are stepping up diplomatic efforts to end Russia's war in the country, with the UK, Germany and France backing a push for direct talks between President Volodymyr Zelensky and President Vladimir Putin. The three countries have reaffirmed that Europe must play a central role in any negotiated settlement while continuing military support to Kyiv. For more now, let's cross over to Thomas Sparrow, correspondent with our partners DW in Berlin. Thomas, great to see you as always. European leaders are backing ceasefire talks, but what concrete preconditions are they insisting on before negotiations can move forward?
There are 5 concrete preconditions before negotiations can move forward. The most important of those preconditions is, first, that a ceasefire must come immediately, that a ceasefire must come before those negotiations. That is one aspect in which the Europeans do not see eye to eye with the Russian government. The Russian government believes that a ceasefire now would only help Ukraine to rearm, would only help Ukraine to regroup. That's one precondition. The second precondition, probably one that is also medium to long term, is guaranteeing security promises for Ukraine. That was what you understand under the concept of security guarantees. Essentially, in plain words, what that means is promising that Ukraine will not be attacked again after a settlement is reached. And among those preconditions, among those security guarantees, one of the issues that is discussed the most is whether Ukraine would become a NATO member or could become a closer partner to NATO. That is something that the Europeans favor, but that is a no-go for Russian President Putin. What you also have as part of these preconditions is that the contact line, so basically where the fighting is happening now, that must be there, that must stop for those discussions to begin. Again, an issue where Russia does not agree because they see that they can only put this war to an end when they have reached their goals. So while we're talking about European preconditions to join the negotiating table, it doesn't seem to be preconditions that are in the interest of the Russian government. So you see clearly here that the two parties are seeing very different priorities when it comes to ending the war in Ukraine.
Well, Thomas, at the same time, how is the situation on the battlefield shaping these diplomatic efforts?
So on the battlefield, basically fighting continues from both sides, from Russian side and from the Ukrainian side. Russia attacking Ukrainian parts, and at the same time Ukraine also attacking deeper into Russian territory, even close to St. Petersburg, one of Russia's most important cities. That is something that, according to analysts, according to experts, could make diplomacy on the one hand more urgent. And that's something that European leaders clearly see, the fact that on the battlefield fighting still continues after many years since the war in Ukraine began. But it could also make diplomacy more difficult because both the Ukrainians and the Russians see basically that with their fighting and with their military operations, they are at least moving towards their military goals. So it could make diplomacy more urgent, but it could also make those discussions at the table, at the negotiating table, much more difficult to achieve.
Thomas, I guess this is where we'll have to pull the plug on this interview. Thank you so much for bringing us these reports and, of course, your analysis on them. Well, just before we go on the world today, thousands of devotees have converged on the Nampally exhibition grounds in Hyderabad for the annual Patini Fish Prasadam, a traditional remedy believed to be by supporters to help treat asthma and other respiratory ailments. The practice involves swallowing a live fish containing a herbal paste prepared by the Batini Gut family, which has overseen the event for nearly 181 years. According to the family, the remedy was handed down by a Hindu saint in 1845 under a pledge that would always be distributed free of charge. Well, the Indian Medical Association has repeatedly questioned the treatment under the Drugs and Magic Remedies Act of 1954, citing concerns over the lack of transparency surrounding its ingredients. Despite criticism, however, thousands continue to attend the annual event, keeping a live tradition that has been passed down through generations. That is the world we live in. Thanks for watching. I'm Amarachi Ubani.